forward to our last panel discussing leadership's role in transforming business models during pandemic. We have amongst us Dr. Indu Shahani, President and Chairperson, Innovative Schools Union; Rajendra Mehta, President and CHRO, Welspun; Rajiv Bhalla, Managing Director, Barco India; Sachin, Rajan, Partner and Managing Director, Russel Reynolds Associates. With the session chair, Dr. Annurag Batra, Chairman and Editor-in-Chief, BW Businessworld and Exchange for Media Group. I request the panelists to kindly unmute themselves as and when they speak. Over to you, Dr. Batra.
Annurag.
Okay, I think we have Dr. Batra joining already. So he may chair the session now.
So Annurag, it's good that you have a professor on the panel. I took over your place till you came, and I said they could start the introductions. And Sachin has already introduced himself.
Sachin, I thought, fine. As long as you don't charge us a fee for it, we're quite happy. Even if you charge, we'd be even more happy.
I'm not a business magazine, so don't forget that.
We're no longer just a business magazine. But thank you, jokes apart. Thank you for being so graceful and taking up that time. I was also trying to get in, and it said the studio is full, but now I'm in. And this is a panel that has really tall leaders on the panel. I don't think I can talk to you about leadership, but since Sachin asked about the context, I did mail him a kind of pointers for the discussion. So let me get each one of you for your opening comments. And you said Sachin has already made those.
He did. All he said was introduced himself. That's all. Okay. He hasn't made his comments.
Sachin is well known as a top-notch headhunting firm. And I've had, some of my friends have worked as partners in this firm, and they really do leadership headhunting. So they understand the traits that organizations look for in leaders, and both in HR leaders and leaders who run organizations. So let me start by bringing in Sachin. Tell us what has changed since pandemic. Of course, the rules of leadership are eternal. Being compassionate, doing better listening, leading by example, having resilience, doing self-care. But tell us, what is the kind of leaders organizations are looking for in leadership roles post-pandemic? What has got added on?
Sure. Happy to do that. And thanks for that kind introduction. I think, describing the sort of pandemic in one sweep is perhaps a little unfair. I think we saw it as a couple of phases at least. The initial phase, which was somewhat characterized by paralysis, right, where you simply didn't know where this was going, how this was going to unfold. It's not as if we know now, but I would say that the period April, May, etc. was characterized by that. From then on, I think you've seen some sort of new equilibrium, right? And there's a sense that this is a new, method that we have to deal with. I think the way in which people have dealt with this has some sectoral nuance as well, right? I think you see, if I can call them traditional sectors, which have been somewhat challenged at the business model level itself, right? And there you see the leadership challenge is more about how to face those realities, how to time their interventions around that, how to, be decisive around what to do, etc. But we have to remember that there's a whole other set of sectors for whom this has presented opportunity, right? So if you take, for example, healthcare, if you take anything digital, there, for example, the spirit has been more about how do we seize the moment, how do we transform, how do we catalyze, etc. And so I can share with you that, for example, as a search firm, and I get asked this question all the time because people see us as some sort of a lead indicator of where the market is going, etc. And you'll be fascinated to know that aside of that initial paralysis period, hiring is probably back to where it was pre-COVID at a leadership level. Now, the color, but the landscape of that hiring has changed dramatically. The type of roles has changed. The type of sectors that are hiring has changed. So the word pivot features very, very actively in all of this. And I'm happy to describe some of those characteristics a little more, but maybe a couple of sentences which will stimulate some of the rest of the thinking as well. I think more often than not, both clients and candidates are starting to ask slightly more existential questions about what they're doing. They're starting to question what is the sort of purpose of my organization and where am I really headed? How am I impacting this ecosystem and people's lives? And that's where, again, sectors like healthcare, digital transformation, etc., are starting to be a little more salient. I think at a more macro level, businesses are being challenged to ask questions about, their role in very lofty topics like sustainability and so on, which never featured in job specifications or board specifications, board assessments, and so on. All of a sudden, these new words have crept a lot more into the narrative, which I think is very encouraging. So, in a positive sense, I think there have been some very interesting, useful disruptions that have happened with respect to talent. But happy to deep dive and double click on any of that that's important as we go around.
Thank you, Sachin. We need those specific inputs. And what has changed? You added sustainability as a key area of performance. I would say, I think listening has much more value than it ever had. Compassion has more value than it ever had. And I think how you communicate internally and externally even has more value than it ever had. In a world where you're not physically meeting, not meeting face to face, to be able to convey what you want to convey over a digital device or a video and be able to bring that compassion to the conversation is very important. Dr. Shahani, you're in a unique position. You not only built an institution many times over, but you're also creating leaders who will go on to build institutions. What is the sense that you have in terms of what has changed in leadership? What are the new leadership attributes that have got added up?
So, I'm going to really begin with us experimenting initially on what was leadership all about, because I think academics is a completely different ball game than from the corporate world. Unfortunately, that's why our educational institutions are not really aligned or are not in matching up with what is really actually happening in the real world. And in fact, my PhD was on industry academia interface, just to try to see that we needed to bring those leaders, that the real leaders that the future of India needed. But I'm just going to begin with for two aspects here, definitely. And one is, first of all, it was a triple calamity, as we all know: healthcare calamity, economic crisis, a humanitarian catastrophe. But for us in academics, it was a perfect e-storm, because we had teachers on one hand, we had students and parents on the other hand, and then the third was we had technology. But till now, no one had ever considered or embraced technology to the extent that they should have, because all this while, online teaching was always supplementary to the formal face-to-face teaching. But today, online teaching, virtual teaching is the formal teaching. And I think that gave, first of all, let me talk about academic leadership within the institutions. I have to say, I'm sorry to say that while younger institutions, whereas private institutions like ours went overnight into virtual trainings, and 16th March, we were already the classes on, we did see that there were old school snobbery that was going on and ran the risk of Nokiafication, as I would call it. And today, I'm happy to see that a large number of some of the IIT deans and IIMs write to me to say, can you tell us some of these things that you've been doing and share that with us? And we've got videos which we said. And don't forget, I run a design school. How do you teach design on this? So first of all, let me tell you, how do you create, pardon? I didn't hear that.
Inculcate design thinking in
all of them, right? first of all, it has to begin with, before I create design thinkers, I have to have my faculty who are outliers. They have to be the ones who are ready to take charge and do this. If I really wish I could demonstrate one of the lectures which a 23-year-old young man is taking for product design, where in the first lecture on a Monday, he gets into the class, he has his 3 devices, the cell phone, the iPad, and the laptop, and he keeps those 3 together. He actually creates a prototype, which then the students create the prototype on their computers, and that is mailed to the printing houses. Printing houses print those, and by next Monday, the prototype, the product design is in front of you. Now, this itself is design thinking, right? Design thinking is nothing but innovation. And how do they really create innovation? So I think one of the things that I have to say, and I'll have a lot to say about this, is that no longer should leadership be just centralized. I think it's time that leadership is completely decentralized. You know, as we were packing up and we were leaving because schools and colleges were closed on 16th, all schools and colleges are still not open. The UGC has just said they will open on 1st November. But I said to myself, and my young students said to me, those are your future leaders. Schools can close, colleges can close. Should learning close? Should learning be stopped? And we carried on. And they are digital natives. They picked it up faster than anything else. So I think decentralization. No longer can you have top-to-down leadership. All my students have to be leaders in my school. That's the leaders that I will be able to send out to the industry. Right, we'll go ahead on this later.
Thank you so much. We've heard Sachin, we've heard Dr. Shahani. It's your turn. And again, you built a company, right? You built an organization. So we would love to know your perspective on what has changed in leadership. And I want to come back to all of you to ask you, what has changed within you? What's your number one lockdown lesson? So let me bring in Mr. Rajiv Bhalla, who's the Managing Director of Barco India. Rajiv, what is the catalyst beyond COVID that you are kind of using to transform your own organization and your leaders?
I view the organizations. What we are going through today is like a ship that is stuck in a storm, right? And when you're stuck in a storm, you have these pessimists who often complain about the wind. The optimists who are saying, "Hey, things will improve," and the leader who adjusts the sails. So I've seen that again in today's day and age, what really matters is how do we as leaders kind of adjust the sails of our organizations, adjust or repivot towards what we call as a new normal, and that can be done with a lot of resilience, with a lot of focus on what I call as the 3C approach. You have more compassion, you care for your people, you care for you take those critical decisions. But at the end of it, what's changed for me personally, I've seen is that I've kind of, if I may use the word, you've got to get a PhD, something like passion, hunger, and desire to want to grow. And I think all of us are in that space that are wanting to try to make a difference.
Absolutely. By the way, I keep saying I have a PhD, but that's a permanent head damage. That's what I have. But I use in my book, which is coming out called 8 Days a Week, I have a chapter called PhD, which is Passion, Hunger, Desire. And I have a 3C here. Awesome. I wrote a piece in Businessworld early on in April called the 3C economy. C being compassion, the second C being collaborative, and the third being contactless. So you have to have compassion as a leader. You got to collaborate internally and externally, even more than you used to. And of course, you got to imagine everything is contactless, every part of the operations. Sachin, I want to ask you, you were giving us some moments of truth. Tell us what your clients are saying to you. Tell us some real conversations that you've had or a sense of those real conversations.
Sure. So a couple of things, right? I mean, some themes and things. So first of all, if we were doing a CEO search last year, a lot of the job description, and I heard Prabir speak about the job description, and some of that, spot on, right? I mean, the role of the job description, which used to talk about the 5-year plan and, the long-term vision. I mean, those discussions have kind of, become a bit, they become less salient. Let me put it that way, right? It's a lot of
Literally,
absolutely. It's about, let's talk about the next 12 months. Let's talk about what we can do with this for the next 24 months. And with that, I think even the process. So that's at one level, right? In terms of a more, a sense of immediacy about this, right? Let's grab this moment and see what it has to offer. I think in terms of the process by which people are hired, that's also interesting, right? I mean, again, to go back to, March, April, May, there was a sense that, we will tee this up, right? We will engage with people over Zoom and phone, etc. But we won't make the hire until, we've met the person in the flesh and all of that. And that very quickly became impractical, right? By the time we got to May and June. And you'd be amazed. I mean, in the last 3 months, in the last month alone, we probably consummated maybe $3 billion P&L CEO searches, right? Where the candidate and the client have not met in person at all. And this was inconceivable in any paradigm or world, right? Now, what has changed? What has changed is interesting, right? What has changed is that whereas previously there was a high degree of art or intuition around this, right? In other words, the interviewer walking out of the room saying, I have a good feeling about this, right? We had good vibes, we have good chemistry. This is now being completely replaced and de-risked by slightly more sophisticated tools, right? So some basic tools like referencing, but maybe we're double downing on referencing. Lots more interest in speaking to people who have worked with the individual and getting real color around them, their backgrounds and things like that, which can be done virtually, but also using psychometric tools a lot more, right? Which are increasingly getting more and more sophisticated and able to predict how this leader will function. I'll give you a small example. In the recent past, it was very possible to think of someone as a great people leader. And today there's a recognition that really is a label and it means nothing, right? Because you can be a people leader and at two ends of the spectrum, you can either be the very galvanizing sort who will rally the troops, fire up 100 people in the room, or you can be a very deep, authentic, connecting person, right? And who's able to actually relate to people at a very authentic level. One of the pivots we're finding in this world is that the premium on that authentic, connecting type leader is a little higher. Just as an example, right, of something that's changed versus the rah-rah galvanizer. And it's interesting because you would have thought that, in times like this pandemic, the need to inspire, motivate, and all of that is true, but the need to connect and come across authentic, pragmatic, and a realist, because I think what drives anxiety in people is lack of visibility, right? And they want leaders who will tell it to them as it is, be optimistic for sure, right? So it's just interesting how the nuance on some of this has played out. To give you another example, previously we would say we need a strategic leader. Now, strategic leader can really, if you peel it further, and we do that with our psychometric tools, there's two ends to that, right? On the one hand, you can be disruptive and strategic. On the other hand, you can be pragmatic and strategic as well, right? There's no good or bad here. But again, in this world, there's again a little bit of a dial-up on the notion of pragmatism, right? In other words, are you able to think through scenarios in a slightly more nuanced manner, right? And steer the ship accordingly, right? I mean, we love the fact that you're heroic and batting on the front foot, but we're really worried that you could run us off the cliff as well, right? So just some of that interesting dichotomy playing out.
Okay, interesting. I think I would say that for everything we do, whether it's education, it's the institute, Dr. Shahani runs, it's a media company, it's a headhunting business. I think virtual and contactless have to be part of our being now. I know we are doing a lot of things because of compulsion. When we have a choice, we'll see what sticks and what goes away. But I'd like to get Dr. Shahani's comment. Dr. Shahani, what has changed in the way you lead your organization?
So I think I have to say that I've always been very hands-on. I used to do management by walking around, and I just felt that at this time, it was very important for me to grow more leaders and to give them the responsibility. And if they fail, I have to stand with them. To take opportunities. I had so many of my faculty who decided to change the curriculum, who decided to some of them, of course, were very disruptive. Some of them, as you said, very strategic. But I had to just have faith. And I think my trust and faith was tested a lot at this time. And I just had to close my eyes and say, no, they're going to make it happen. And they're going to do it. Because I'm not on the scene, I'm not on the campus, I'm not in the classroom, I'm not there. I have to have that. So I think trust was the most important thing that helped me at this stage. A second thing probably which really helped me was empathy. I realized, most of our teachers, faculty are women, and we do have, of course, male faculty. And I did realize that they would have difficulties. We in fact took a survey. Normally we would start 8 a.m. lectures, 7:30 a.m. lectures. We took a survey of what suited the faculty, and the students were thrilled because they said they are a Netflix generation, so they were happier starting at 10:30 in the morning. And our sessions, and the other thing that has happened is now we have international faculty who are happy to teach our modules because they don't have to come here personally. So what's really happened for us in education, which people are not realizing, is that it's made education innovative. It's made education interdisciplinary, because now my design students can actually take a class in the management. My communication students can take a media class or can take a films class. So there was so much interdisciplinary. And the third was international. I have Professor Farooq Udwadia, who is rated as one of the best professors in Rutgers. He teaches. I have young Janak, who's now in Colombia because his wife works for TCS, and he teaches from there. And young Omkar teaches from Russia. I mean, I would have never had all this. So I think the more important thing is that it was important to trust them, to give them this opportunity that they had to work. And one very other important thing was I had to keep up, updated with the technology. I could not have asked them what was happening if I did not know what different things could be done. And so I didn't take a mentor from a teacher. I formed a group of what is called the Dean's List. These are some of my brightest kids, and they join hands with me and have put together Zoom classes to the extent that even Zoom probably does not know that this is the kind of technology that can be used. And they get into breakout rooms, and they get into spotlights, and they get into, I can't tell you what theater goes on when a class is going on. And this is all being done because the co-hosts are not faculty, the co-hosts are students. And I think trusting the younger people, trusting that they are going to make it happen, I think trust. I would just say trust and empathy. As I did tell you when I was about to say that we realized the timings we changed. I could understand that one of my staff faculty was not very comfortable because a desktop was not with her. So we got that delivered. We got all and for our fashion studios, they needed those studios, right? How the hell do they teach fashion on? Everything was done because we felt that they needed that kind of support. So empathy and trust.
To be able to bring empathy and trust in this VUCA kind of situation, and a touchless word, so to say, can really make the difference in somebody being very enthused and hence giving his or her best, or just doing a tick mark. I think trust and empathy can create miracles. They can get people to fly when they're supposed to only walk or run. So I think trust and empathy were important before COVID. They're even more important post-COVID. Rajiv, what has changed in the way you lead your organization? What has changed in the way you engage with your HR head or the HR team so that they understand that this is the direction company is taking, and hence that's what they got to energize their colleagues with?
I think if you really look at it, the pandemic has taught us one thing, that physical proximity isn't the only way to connect, right? What it's also taught us is that work is not a place anymore. Work is really outcomes and results. It doesn't matter where you get work done, you've got to get it done, right? And when you look at today's environment, I think what's key is every organization needs to be a digital organization. If you have someone who's afraid of adopting digital, I think there's a disaster that's waiting to happen. Hybrid is going to be the new norm. We've already seen that happen within Barco and in all the other organizations where people are working from home, people are working from the office. And at that point of time, it becomes really critical that we as leaders maintain a trustworthy, transparent, authentic communication with them. You keep your associates or employees engaged. What also becomes critical, I mean, since we come from the technology field, we are seeing a lot of work happening on cloud, on IoT, on artificial intelligence, on machine learning in our factory. I mean, we are already beginning to see more and more stuff happening around what we call as the dark factory, where there's going to be an increasing amount of automation of some processes. So HR's role really is critical at this point of time. HR's role really is to ensure that we not only reskill our employees, but we also kind of keep them engaged. Everyone's going through some amount of uncertainty, some amount of mental health issues, as you see it, and it becomes critical again as an organization that we work towards engaging with our employees, helping them reskill, get new mastery of skills, help them in finding a purpose on what they're doing, where they're taking the organization. And at the same time, organizations are going to become flatter. Organizations are going to have more amount of decentralization take place. And at that point of time, HR's role is also to ensure that you empower your teams, and we as leaders empower our teams so that they can be self-directed and grow. I'm pretty clear, Annurag, whilst there will be, after the pandemic, there are going to be books written on, or chapters in books written on the pandemic and the crisis. There are also going to be chapters written on how the humans, adopted to resilience and how they kind of worked towards a better future. So I think our goal really with our team and with the HR is to ensure that you kind of, make the employees believe and trust in themselves, trust in their capabilities, and help them deliver brighter outcomes, as we say.
Thank you so much. I agree with you, Rajiv, that work is not a place, it's an outcome and result. In fact, I keep saying that two more terms, and they're not just terms, they reflect the mindsets of screenagers. All of us may not be teenagers, we are not teenagers, but we are all screenagers. So one is bring your own office. Bring your own office wherever you are. A related term is WFA, work from anywhere. I am used to it for the last 10, 12 years. I can work from home, hotel, coffee shop, because I'm an entrepreneur. But it requires a certain set of wiring. And on a jocular vein, my colleagues would ask us if is work from home allowed? And I said, yes, it is allowed on Saturday, Sunday. It is allowed on work Saturday, Sunday. But today we have a boundaryless working. I mean, all of us, of course, switch off on a certain day. I'm sure each one of us has a day, a Saturday, Sunday, Friday. but we are working more. So we need to build a new boundaries around how we work, how organizations work, because people need to have their downtime, they need to have their rejuvenation, they need to find time for their parents, their children, wife, whatever there is, support system. And I think that realization is coming that COVID is here to stay for a while. So we'll have to evolve a new system and work within this digital, virtual way of working, rather than wait for the physical way to come back and then compartmentalize work. And I can work from anywhere, but I'm not sure that work from home productivity is the best. It is best for a certain kind of people. It's not good for everyone. That's my personal view running a company. Let me go to Sachin. Sachin, if you had to make 2 or 3 predictions about the future, what would those be?
So, a couple of things, right? Look, I'm an optimist, so you'll find me, describing more of the upside. But to stay with the downside for a second, right? On a more somber note, I think some things have changed irrevocably, and for the near term and medium term as well. I'll give you an example. We used to, in our CEO, CXO work, 1 in every 6 or 7 hires we would make would be a returning Indian, from the diaspora who bought into the India story, etc. I see that global nature of our work not coming back for a while, right? Because I think there's far too much concern. You see people just digging in, right? Let's just stay where we are and secure ourselves from a physical perspective, right? So I think that global movement of talent, that's taken several steps back, which is unfortunate, because that was a huge lever in the overall sort of galvanization, if you will, of companies, economy, etc. I think the other thing is also this notion of virtual work beyond a point, right? The commute model and things like that. You'd be amazed how many people we had doing Delhi, Bombay, Singapore, Bombay, going back over weekends. That's gone for a toss as well. So that, and those have meaningful impacts, right? Because you're then going very local into what you want to achieve as a working ecosystem environment. I think on the other hand, what's happening is, and we haven't talked about this, but the much discussed, sometimes maligned millennial generation, I think is really coming to the fore now. And I'm sure Dr. Shahani will have a view on this, but 2 sort of ticket to play, if you will. One is technology, and how facile you are with technology is becoming a bit of a ticket to play now, right? You just to conduct yourself in the work environment and be efficient and gain competitive edge. And this talent is so easy at it, right? It's like an extension of a limb or something like that. And the other thing is, as much as this group is very free-spirited and sometimes gets criticized for that, their notion of being entrepreneurial and have this appetite to take risks, do things differently, challenge the norm, etc., is fantastic, right? And that's another competency that's coming so much to the fore. So I feel optimistic. I think all of this will come into play quite nicely in the coming years. But let's see.
Thank you, Sachin, for being so, forthcoming with the trends you see and all the things that you mentioned, right? They have changed and they may get accentuated in future. Dr. Shahani, your predictions for the future?
So I'm just going to say one thing that Sachin talked about. They're going to become more entrepreneurial. Sachin, when I started the School of Management and Entrepreneurship, that was the first time that a school was being started for entrepreneurship, a 3-year undergraduate program and a 2-year postgraduate program. We are the AICT's only school for that and for design. People said entrepreneurs, even today your rankings for world-class institutions are done by the jobs that your students get, and it's not by entrepreneurship. And I said to myself that for 25 years when I was principal at the HR college, I was only creating job seekers. And it was time that I wanted to bring in job creators. And my gosh, I can't tell you, I faced a lot of opposition, but the pandemic is something that has helped me. Today, every young student, do you know, within the first week of us going virtual, 3 students got together and created an app which would take attendance, which would take the feedback for the students, which would take everything. Overnight, edtech companies are going to come up, for our business. And I could see that. I love that spirit in the students. And a young student telling me, I'm creating masks for children, Mickey Mouse masks for children, the design students are doing. I mean, all this kind of spirit of entrepreneurship. So I do hope that this will give, because jobs are not going to be there. People have lost jobs. So I hope this gives impetus to our young people to see that they don't have to only come out of IIMs and IITs and get into the big, into the multinationals and so on, that entrepreneurship is a way out. And I think we're seeing that trend. That's one of the first things. A second thing that I see, I think something that Rajan also talked about is respecting people. He talked about, and I would say respecting women. I think all of us have become aware of how much the women put in when they are double working, when they're doing their work and so on. I think diversity is really truly being demonstrated today to see how well these women have coped. I mean, I have a male professor who tells me that, ma'am, I can do everything, but when I have to iron the clothes, it's something that I'm just not able to do it. I mean, at least he realized that, this is something that should have been there. Today, I think we'll respect women more. And I'm sure people like Sachin and others will bring back more and more women into the workforce. If they were able to teach, if they were able to look after their children's teaching while the pandemic is going on, cook and do everything, and only take an hour's lunch break and a couple of hours in the evening, they have to prepare for the lectures the next day. I feel more women now should be encouraged to come into the workforce. And that's my second prediction. A third, which related to education, of course, is that I think there'll be more emphasis on study in India, because students going abroad, it's not going to be the same. I have had a large number of parents who were talking to me saying that, what do they do? Do they defer? Do they stay back? We helped them out with some foundation programs. We worked with universities to get this kind of a golden bridge done for them till it's safe for them to go. But parents are not still feeling safe to send their children, especially at the undergraduate level. And so, and if Harvard itself has announced their School of Public Policy has announced that social distancing will carry on till 2022, where is the question of anyone wanting to go in this next year or next 2 years? So it's time, universities in India, please pull up your socks. We have to create a brand for ourselves and make it study in India. If it's make in India, if it's skill in India, if it is startup India, why not study in India? And that, I feel, should be the future. We should be able to attract our own students to our own universities.
Rajiv, your predictions for the future?
So most of the the points have been covered by the co-panelists. But what I'd say is that whatever we are doing right today might not be right tomorrow, and whatever's working today might not work tomorrow, right? So I think the future is going to be as disruptive as it has been over the last 6 months. What's clear is the future is going to be driven by digital. There are going to be more and more digital enabled disruptions that will take place. The future is going to be hybrid, where people will work the way they want to work, and it's going to be outcome measured. And the future is going to be driven by leaders who believe that who will continue to retool their organizations, just like I equated to flying a plane and building your organization, building a plane when it's flying. So you'll have to continue to be agile and continue to build your organization just as you're on the go. So the long-term and short-term plans are not going to be as valid as they were before. So that's what I see in the future. Yes, people will play an important role. Reskilling of people is going to be the key.
Thank you so much, Rajiv. I want to ask you my last question, and I want a short answer. While we are discussing the future of work and human resource management, we cannot detach it from the future of business and economy. As people who lead organizations, I want to understand, what is your sense? When do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom? Let me start with you, Rajiv, first.
I will not give a politically correct answer, but I honestly think that we'll be well past H1 of calendar year 21 before we are able to see some semblance of growth. If you go by the analyst report, then it's going to be somewhere around the first quarter of 2022 when you will be actually seeing real growth. We play in three segments, Annurag. We play in entertainment, enterprise, healthcare. We are impacted in cinemas, where 50% of our cinemas use our projectors. So we are seeing a downturn there, but we are seeing upsides on healthcare, and we are seeing upsides on large infra projects, which we believe will lead growth for Barco.
Okay, you have taken a little time, will tell it's pessimistic, optimistic, or realistic, but clearly you feel it will be 12 to 18 months before we can come back. And some people share your view. Dr. Shahani?
I'm going to make this really only related to education. I would say the economy will be back. For me, I will feel the economy is back when my students and parents across schools and across our colleges can afford to pay the fees back. We've given a lot of concessions. I've been talking to school leaders, and I've been talking to college institutions and universities to say that please understand that people have lost their jobs, that because education is inelastic demand, that does not mean that we should not allow them to, defer their payments. And I hope the economy comes back again, because I don't want education to suffer.
Sachin,
there's sectoral disparity, but if I had to take an overall view, I'd say Q2 next year. I feel optimistic about, but let's see.
Thank you for that specific comment. I wish all you, three of you, luck in whatever you do, is what you do makes impact. Sachin, you help organization get the right leaders, which can then make an impact on a larger set of people and the community, depending upon what sector that business is in. Dr. Shahani, great leader, and Rajiv, thank you for serving the industries you serve. Dare I say, I think it will depend on three factors. When COVID goes away, when do we have a vaccine? That's the first. Second is, how much does the government spend? And third, if the government is going to get, banks to be a little more, enthusiastic about lending, because there is a credit issue, there is a demand issue, and there is a liquidity crunch. So, if it will depend on these three, but my own guess it will be at least 6 to 12 months before the economy can see some semblance of where it was pre-COVID. So thank you so much, and we are grateful that you could give us your time. And Dr. Shahani, we look forward to seeing you at the awards in the evening. We start almost in an hour and 10 minutes. Back to you, Wanda.